real treat today. It's 12:30 and people keep coming. This is really fantastic. Today is a really special day. I cannot believe it is June 1st, 2022. And it's so good to see family and friends and many. Actually, I do want to give a special shout out to our Park Avenue Synagogue friends, Mark and Barbara. And I think there are some other folks who we went on this trip together, and Agi was our guide, and it's just super duper special. And it's I wish we were going on a real trip, but I got to tell you, today it's going to be the next best thing. Agi is an amazing, I would say guide, but you're also a great friend, which is the most important thing. As we say in America, you leave it all on the field, which is just amazing thing for us. So I want to welcome friends to this CSP event. Today is a virtual walking tour of Budapest, and our guide is Agi Antal. As we begin June through August is the beginning of CSP's 22nd annual fundraising drive, and there are membership levels and benefits of membership, and there's the new membership configuration will have access to videos, special content, and contests, etc. Also, June through August is the CSP hat. I have a few of them myself, and logo wear challenge. Wear your CSP logoed item this summer, send in a picture and win prizes. Before COVID, I won a couple. I won 1 year for wearing the CSP hat in the Blue Lagoon in Iceland. It was really, it was great. So we'll talk about the dedication of this program in just one moment. If you're keeping track at home, this is CSP online program since March 2020, number 440. Really pretty amazing. Upcoming programs. Tomorrow, June 2nd, we have the Peggy Guggenheim special relationship with the Tel Aviv Museum of Art with Sophia Berry. Next Sunday is Shavuot, and there is a program next Tuesday, June 7th, Dancing with Fire, the Hasidic Masters, part 1 of 4 with Danny Masang. There will be no actual fire involved. I don't want anybody to worry. It's very important to us. Thank you for laughing, Barbara. I do appreciate it. June 8th, we have moral philosophy, spiritual psychology with a crisis and a conscience, a public conversation with Rabbi Mordechai Finley and conversation with Rabbi Eli Spitz. And then on June 9th, a CSP summer adventure to Balto, Scandinavia with Evgenia Kempinski, who, if you were on the, I guess a couple weeks ago, CSP did a 3-part program to Russia that was really fantastic. And Park Avenue people, Evgenia was one of our guides for the Russia trip in November of 2019. It is a small world. And there's a lot more. Before I introduce Agi, I mentioned, or you might have seen in some of the PR that, hold on, let me get the right place, the right thing to share with the screen. There we go. Today's program has special meaning. Whoops, right share screen. Has special meaning for me because this launches a year-long virtual travel series dedicated by my mom in loving memory of my father, Joseph Yossi Savinor. So I just wanted to say a word about my father, which is my father grew up in the Boston area and in the second largest immigrant community in the United States, which is in Massachusetts, Chelsea, Mass. And my father loved to travel. Actually, my father, the first time he ever went away was with the Boy Scouts, in 1950. And over here, you can see the mouse. That's my dad. And the Rotary Club, he got a scholarship, and it really changed his life to be able to dream of the world beyond where he lived. This is the clipping of when my mom and my dad got married in 1960, and it says, "Mr. Savinor and bride take a European trip." And so my father got inspired by Theodore Herzl's dream, which actually might have been actually hatched a few feet from where Agi is. And when my mother and my father got serious, my father said to my mother, "If you love me, one day you're going to move with me to Israel." And they actually did. And it's a longer story for another day. You can read the book, literally. I'm writing it. So my dad, I have these pictures here because Professor Lutz, you might recognize that spot. Can you name it? This one right here. It's the 5 of us. It's in the Jordan River Valley as we were driving up to Beit Sha'an. So we were there for Pesach in 1995. And, you know, it was hot. It was long. The 5 of us were there. And my dad told the driver to pull over. We're like, "Come on, we want to get there." My dad said, this was my dad. "This is the most spectacular view of anything I've ever seen, and we have to pull over and get a picture." So, and by the way, in Israel, these flowers only bloom for like 2 or 3 weeks a year, and then it gets too hot and they wither. So my dad really didn't just love to travel, but my dad had this real sense of taking in the moment. And I think my brothers and I hopefully inherited that from him. And he didn't just pull over to smell the roses or see the flowers. This one is near the off the Charles River in Boston. And if he saw something amazing that caught his eye, maybe the Bresnays might know exactly where that is as well. You know, with it's right off the Charles. My dad was just curious and to take advantage of it. And so it means a lot to me that my mother wanted to underwrite this travel series. And it really is special that our first scholar that is going to lead us today is my friend. So Agi Antal, her biography could go, but she has been a guide for many years. She is considered to be the #1 guide in Budapest. When we met actually 6 years ago this week, I thought I was going on a tour, and I didn't know I was finding a fellow traveler and teacher for life. And so with no further ado, I want to hand it over to Agi, and thank you in advance for an excellent program. Friends, I'm going to encourage you to, #1, turn on your closed captioning in case you need it. #2 is put your questions into the chat, and please mute yourself. Agi is live in Budapest, and with no further ado, let me turn it over to my really good friend, Agi Antal.
Thank you, dear Charlie. First of all, I would like to say thank you that you make it possible for me to show my Jewish district for so many people in a virtual way. So we are starting in front of the Dohany Synagogue. You see this gorgeous building behind me, do you? This is the largest synagogue of Europe. Only the 2nd largest of the whole world, because the Temple Emmanuel in New York is about 1 inch larger. We always lose these competitions, you know. Now, the fact that there is such an imposing synagogue in a city proves that this city must have had, or still must have, an important Jewish community. Actually, Jews were here already in the Roman days. After the Second Temple of Jerusalem was destroyed, Jews spread around in the whole area of the great Roman Empire, and Hungary, under the name Pannonia, was part of it. There were Jews also among the incoming Hungarians. They came from Central Asia, and they mixed with Khazar people. And you know the Khazar tribes, they converted to Judaism. But the first bigger Jewish community settled down on the other side of the Danube. You saw those maps about Europe and Hungary and Budapest. So we are now on the Pest side. And the first Jewish community settled down on the other side, on the Buda side, when Buda became the capital of Hungary in the 1200. The king, Béla IV, invited a quite large Jewish community to live next to his castle. It was always the same story everywhere in Europe. We live next to kings and aristocrats. We gave them money. They gave us protection. On the royal money those days, there were Hebrew letters because the mint was run by Jews. So that was about the medieval days, and all this happened on the Buda side. Pest started to be developed only around the end of the 1700s. And the golden age of the Jewish society started with the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, 1867. Those days, Budapest had a nickname, Judapest. And from the 1 million inhabitants, 240,000 were Jewish. Jews were in the art, education, literature, science, economy, parliament. I think there is no other place beside Israel where the Jewish community was so very involved in the formation of the country, like here in Hungary. It is as if you have had Mayflower Jews in the US. You simply can't talk about Budapest without Jews. It's like talking about New York without Jews or Los Angeles without Jews. This golden age ended with the First World War, when Hungary, like usually, stood on the wrong side, and the Austro-Hungarian monarchy collapsed, and Hungary lost 2/3 of the land. Germany was the other loser of the First World War, so they promised to help to gain back the lost territories if Hungary enters the next war on their side. So there we were again on the wrong side in the Second World War. It was at the end of 1943 that some smart Hungarian generals realized, again, we made a bad choice. Let's negotiate with the Allies. When Hitler learned about this, he lost his trust in Hungary, and Hungary was occupied by the Nazi army 1944, March the 19th. Wearing yellow stars for Hungarian Jews was obligatory from 1944, April the 5th. Ghettoization of the countryside started 1944, April the 15th. And the first Hungarian transport arrived to Auschwitz 1944, May 15. This is the tragedy of the Hungarian Holocaust. The whole world knew about everything. I've seen photos taken about Auschwitz by the Allies before the first Hungarian transport arrived. Between May 15 and July 6, 437,000 Hungarian Jews were deported, mainly to Auschwitz. The whole countryside was wiped out. On July the 6th, the Allies frightened the Hungarian governor, Admiral Horthy. If you sign one more deportation, we level Budapest, was said. Horthy got frightened and he stopped signing the deportations. Eichmann left the city, very disappointed, and Budapest still had approximately 200,000 Jews. Eichmann only came back mid-October. Why? Because that's when Admiral Horthy recognized that the Allies are not going to negotiate with Hungary. You know what was the Tehran conference about before the Yalta Agreement? Eastern Europe is liberated by Stalin, Western Europe is liberated by the Allies. And this is unfortunately not Western Europe. So we could stand on our head. The Allies would not negotiate with Hungary. Admiral Horthy, who hated the Soviets and the communists, didn't want to get it until the last moment, and that was October the 15th, 1944, when he made a speech in the Hungarian radio. Okay, I understand. We have to talk to the Russians. Jews of Budapest were dancing waltz on the streets. Finally, the dummy, he got it, they said. They didn't dance long. Next morning, Admiral Horthy was obliged by Germany to give up his power to the Hungarian fascist party. Arrow Cross, that was their name. Group of murderers. Eichmann came back to Budapest. Finally, he could take care of his last big goal, the deportation of the Budapest Jews. But there were no more railroads at that time because the Allied forces destroyed the railroads outside of Hungary, direction to Auschwitz. Never mind, Eichmann said, I'm gonna do it by foot. Vienna needs a wall to protect the city from the Russians, and the Jews of Budapest are perfect to construct it. It was a complete nonsense. You saw tens of thousands of old men, children, women being chased on foot toward the Austrian border. It was such a terrible sight. So many Gentiles, aristocrats, priests, and diplomats protested against it that they had to stop the story. And that's when the ghettoization of Budapest started. So the wall behind me that surrounded the Jewish part of the Jewish district, and Charlie showed a photo about the area of the ghetto, was constructed only in November 44, sealed December the 10th, and liberated by the Russian Red Army, January the 18th, 45. This was the only ghetto of Europe which was not liquidated, but liberated. When the two ghettos of Budapest were liberated, because there was another one along the river Danube, beside the 100,000 Jews who survived in these two ghettos, they found 25,000 to 30,000 more Jews hiding at Gentile homes and abandoned apartments. This is a huge number. So these are the reasons why we have today such a large Jewish community. Today there are approximately, they say there are more than 100,000 Jews in Budapest. We have several different Jewish day schools, kosher restaurants, coffee houses, about 20 operating synagogues. But the truth is that if you want to find us, don't look for us so much in the synagogues. You can much easier find the Budapest Jews in Jewish book fairs, film festivals, and cultural festivals. Budapest Jews are very secular. We call ourselves cultural Jews. This square, for example, that you see behind me, the square in front of the Dohany Street Synagogue, is pegged only twice a year, Erev Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I have some friends who say, "Oy, vavoy, what a shanda, they want to be Jewish, they only come twice a year and they don't even know how to open the Siddur." But I always tell those friends of mine, what do you want? 32 years ago, not even a drunken bird flew around this synagogue. And now be happy that the street is packed by them. If their kids are going to the Jewish summer camp, they are going to bring back the parents also to the religion. So I'm not talking about the interior. I continue with the summer camp because that's the bottom of my heart. This Jewish summer camp is unbelievable. It's called JDC Sarvas International Jewish Summer Camp, and it is run by the JDC, and it is in Sarvas, southeast of Budapest. Since more than 20 years, every year, 30 countries are sending their kids to this summer camp. It's unbelievable. My son was studying for a year and a half in order to be able to be a counselor in the summer camp. I mean, when you send your kids to a Jewish summer camp in the States, they have fun. They are playing soccer, they are swimming, and they are hiking because they were brought up in a Jewish home. They don't need to learn so much, but imagine here in Central Eastern Europe, a father who puts his daughter on a bus and tells her, you know, my dear daughter, there is an issue that I couldn't talk about yet, but don't worry. When you get off the bus, you're going to learn about it. And this is how that girl learns that she is Jewish. So we have to teach them that being Jewish is not just a burden. It doesn't only mean that you don't have grandparents It means that you are part of a group of highly educated, joyful people with a rich tradition and a meaningful religion. But now we should really talk a bit about the synagogue, but first about the Neolog community, okay? So the Dohany Street Synagogue, which was constructed in 1859, belongs to the Neolog community. Now, you have never heard about that probably, unless you visited Budapest. Neo means new. Log is coming from the Greek word logos, spirit. It's unique to Hungary. It is like the paprika, the salami, and the guyash soup, only in Hungary. Men and women are not sitting together because we are so gorgeous that we would definitely distract our husband, but there is an organ that they use on Shabbos. Now that's probably quite weird for you because if we don't sit together, how can we use an organ? And if we use an organ, then why can we sit together? So this is, it could be explained by the well-to-do Jewish community of Budapest in the 1800s that wanted to shape its Judaism to their integrated Budapest city life. I think that's sort of the best explanation. Now, usually when my guests enter the building, they have two impressions. First, they say, wow, it's gorgeous. Then immediately, it looks like a Jewish cathedral. And now, Charlie, you can really show the interior of the Dohany Street Synagogue. So I hope you can see that on the two sides, there are two pulpits. I know it's a small photo for a huge synagogue, but believe me, there are two pulpits. Pulpits, you know, that's what usually the priests are using in the churches for their sermon. But in the churches, there is usually one pulpit. But we Jews, we have at least two opinions. So we need at least two pulpits. Now, in the Aron HaKodesh, there are 20 Torah scrolls. How did they survive the war? Two Gentile archaeologists, two women, hid these Torah scrolls in the basement of the National Museum of Hungary. You probably noticed that there are two floors for the women. I mean, I have some naughty friends who say, of course, Hungarian Jewish women need a lot of space thanks to the rich Hungarian kitchen. But the polite explanation of the two floors is that Hungarian Jewish women were so very involved in the religious life that they needed equal number of seats as the men outside. Now, in the nice old days, until a year ago, leaving the synagogue, I always stopped at the Judaica art shop of Lucy Brown. And she was more than a friend for me. She was like my adopted mother. An unbelievable lady who died a year ago. And there you see her together with Charlie. And Charlie is still using all the challah covers and the little Judaica art pieces that he got from Lucy. So let me tell you Lucy's story, because I always say that as long as we are speaking about her, she remains with us. She was in her teenager years at the ghettoization, and she was in the ghetto with her mother and sister. Every day they had to march behind an arrow-cross fascist outside of the ghetto to a factory where they worked. And one day, it was already December 44, the fascists started a different direction toward the river Danube. Lucy got suspicious because there were rumors about what was going on around the river Danube. When they crossed the pedestrian street area, suddenly a gate opened and the janitor came out in order to clean the streets. Lucy knew, now or never. She grabbed the arm of her mother and sister, pulled them into the courtyard. They were really lucky. They ripped off their yellow stars and nobody stopped them on the streets. Those days, every block, they stopped you in order to ask for your papers. They could arrive to another district where they had some Gentile friends and they could hide there till the war was over. So this is how she saved herself, her mother and sister from being shot into the river Danube, like those shoes are commemorating those terrible days. That's one of the most powerful Holocaust memorial in Europe. Along the river Danube, statues of shoes are standing. Empty shoes are always talking about those who are missing from them, like that huge pile of shoes in the Auschwitz Museum. That memorial was displayed in 2005 by the opposition. Today, the current government doesn't talk honestly about all that was happening in the Holocaust. But the Shoe Memorial, it states very honestly that it is for the memory of the Jews shot into the river Danube by Arrow Cross militiamen. Everybody knows that the Arrow Cross were the Hungarian fascists. So, back to the square in front of the Dohany Synagogue. You can see behind me, so the synagogue was there, and the building continues quite long with those arches. Now, originally, when the synagogue was constructed in 1859, a simple apartment building was standing next door, and that's where Theodor Herzl was born. Oh yes, the founder of political Zionism wasn't Viennese as he considered himself, but Hungarian, actually still more classy to be Viennese than Budapest was. We still have members of Herzl's family in Budapest. Imagine, the best man of my husband on our wedding was a far descendant of Theodor Herzl. My husband always said, you know, Agi, I think Zionism was the biggest science fiction in the whole world. And look, it became reality. Marriage is also a science fiction. Let's get somebody from Herzl's family. And it works, by the way. So, the Jewish Museum was constructed on the spot of Theodor Herzl's house in 1930. 1930. Were they completely insane, these Jews of Budapest? I mean, 1930, Hungary approached more and more toward Nazi fascist Germany. Why did they spend all their fortune to beautify this community? Why didn't they rather leave? Why could I never meet my dear grandparents? These are the same questions that I ask myself today, reading anti-Semitic articles in extreme right websites sometimes. And my answer is probably the same that their answer was. Home, home. I simply love this city. I love the old streets where every building has a history. I love the river Danube, even if it's a very controversial feeling when I am standing at the Shoe Memorial. I love the language, and my husband is a writer, and the Hungarian literature is amazing. And what I love the most, it's this sense of gallows humor. You know, even in the hardest days of the war, there were jokes on the streets of Budapest. People were asking, what's the difference between Chamberlain and Hitler? Well, Chamberlain takes his weekend in the country, while Hitler, he takes his country in the weekend. So my son is so cute. He says sometimes, Mom, it may happen that we have to leave Hungary, but we must take Budapest with us. So I think that we are about 1/3 of our tour. Actually, the time shows more, but never mind. And I promise that I will ask whether we have any questions. On the other hand, it wouldn't be a bad idea to wait till I ask you again, because it is very possible that I will answer your questions anyway in the next part of the tour. What's
We
your
have some
opinion?
excellent questions, Agi. So we
Already?
want to look
Okay.
forward to.
So, but
no,
do
we're
we
good.
stop
We're
the
good.
questions
Keep going.
now,
You're
or we
doing great.
continue and then at the end? Okay. So my favorite item in the Jewish Museum is a letter written by Theodor Herzl after the first Zionist Congress in Basel, 1898, May 6. In the letter says, I have founded the Jewish state. And even if you laugh at me now, wait for 5 or maximum 50 years and you will see. And exactly 50 years later, Eretz Israel was born. What an amazing visionary he was. I really admire that. And here we are at a plaque which is on the facade of the synagogue side in Hungarian. So don't get really excited. It's for the memory of the Russian Red Army that liberated the ghetto of Budapest. And it stands on the same spot where one of the 4 gates of the ghetto stood. And this is the gate through which my dear father entered in order to save his great love, Lily. Let me tell you this story. You know, I love personal stories. Just like Rahel Korazin, who I admire from the bottom of my heart, and by the way, who has an apartment not far from here. So just like Rahel Korazin uses poems in order to make you understand the Israeli mind and soul and spirit and heart, I myself, I like to use personal stories to bring the history to life. So my dad was born in 1922, which means he was grown up during the Hungarian Holocaust. He was taken to a forced labor camp. Every Hungarian Jewish man between age 16 and 60 had to serve for the Hungarian army without weapons. That was called forced labor camp. What can you do without weapon in the army? Now, if you were really not lucky, they took you to the Eastern Front and they made you march on minefields to discover bombs. No chance to survive. My dad was luckier. He was taken to Western Hungary in order to work on road constructions and terrible circumstances, but labor campers had breaks. During the break, they had to go to their home address and wait for the next call. My dad was smart enough to know that he would not survive a second term. So instead of going home, he came to Budapest and he started hiding. He bought some fake papers, but it wasn't enough. You needed a place where to stay. And luckily, he had some lovely Gentile friends who pretended that he was a member of their family. The only problem was that he was desperately in love with Lily. Lily Schwartz, the gorgeous Jewish opera singer who was here in the ghetto. So my dad wanted to save Lily. He found on the street an armband of the Arrow Cross. Arrow Cross was the Hungarian fascist party. He marched to that gate and said, "Heil Hitler, I'm looking for Lily Schwartz, that nasty Jewish woman who did so much bad to my family that I want to shoot her into the river Danube." And imagine, they bought his story. They helped him find Lily. He took Lily out. They even got married. She's not my mom, though, because Lily only cared about her career as an opera singer and did not want to have a child. Me, by the way. So they divorced. And then in the mid-60s, my dad, who was in the tourist business, had a group of Hungarians. And every morning when he wanted to start touring, one woman was late. Elizabeth was always late. She's my mother. So don't ever be late when you are going to a sightseeing tour, unless you want to marry the guy. Now, after this happy story, unfortunately, I have to talk about something sad. Behind me in the courtyard of the synagogue, there are common graves. I sent a better photo for Charlie, which I will ask him to show us now. That's it. So when the wall around the ghetto was destroyed, they found thousands of dead bodies laying on top of each other, killed by hunger, disease, and by the Arrow Cross. 2,281 bodies are buried here in 24 common graves. More than 1,000 are unidentified. I know that it is not kosher to have a cemetery in the garden of a synagogue, but they had to speed up with the funerals. And you know, it's even less kosher to exhume bodies. So now we rather let them rest in peace. And now we arrived to the place where behind me, you can see the memorial for Kastner. So please, Charlie, change the photo to the Kastner memorial. There it is. Rudolf Kastner saved 4 members of my family. He saved 1,684 Jews on the Kastner train, and beside that, even more people in several different ways. This story started with the Trucks for Life agreement. Last year of the war, Himmler knew that they're gonna lose, and he encouraged Eichmann, try to negotiate with the Allies. And Eichmann suggested to the Allies that he's ready to let free 1 million Jews if the Allies pays 10,000 trucks, war machine, medicine, and coffee. And the Allies refused saving 1 million Jews. First of all, because they did not want to have any conflict with Stalin, and also because there was no country that welcomed 1 million Allied Jews. And this is the sad part of the story. Before it was refused by the Allies, came into the story Kastner. He was a Jewish lawyer from Cluj, Transylvania, where from big part of my family came. A real chutzpah, spoke 5 languages. He was also a big womanizer, actually. He was flirting with a sister of my grandma, Rose. Unfortunately, he was not good enough for my great-grandpa, so Rose ended in Auschwitz. So Kastner arrived to Eichmann office, and I cut the story short because it is an extremely long and complicated story. And I sort of feel really sorry to simplify it. But you know what? I also saw that I have to give you a reason to come to Budapest. If I tell you every story of mine, then why to come personally? So, cutting the story short, Kastner succeeded to get out of the country 1,684 Jews on the Kastner train. Unfortunately for him, the story did not have a happy end. He was murdered in Tel Aviv in 1957. Now, this was really a short version of the Kastner story, I know. And I really promise you that I will give you a much longer, full version of it if you come to Budapest. But here, I would rather like to talk to you about the Raoul Wallenberg Memorial Park has in the middle. About Wallenberg, I will also talk, don't worry, I promise. On the way walking from this spot to the next one, you get the full story of Wallenberg. But here, let me talk about the weeping willow in the middle of the courtyard. We are at the back of the Dohany Street Synagogue. And I sent a great photo for Charlie. So I will ask you to show us a beautiful piece of art, the weeping willow. You know, when Tony Curtis came back to Budapest, because Tony Curtis alias Bernie Schwartz, whose grandpa was born in Hungary and left Hungary in the end of the 1800s. Tony Curtis was born in the Bronx already. In 1990, he came to visit Budapest, and he saw that his money is needed for an important purpose because the Dohany Street Synagogue looked in a terrible shape. And he founded the Emmanuel Foundation for the memory of his father. Now, if you pay $125 for the Emmanuel Foundation, you get a leaf on that silver tree with the name of member of your Hungarian Jewish family who perished in the Holocaust. And the money went for the restoration of the synagogue. So this way, it looks like a weeping willow, a sad tree. But turn it upside down, and then you will see it looks like a menorah, which is the symbol of the light. You also see a black granite stone in front of the tree, and that black granite stone has 2 holes. These 2 holes have the same shape as the tablets of the 10 Commandments, but these are just 2 empty holes because Europe lost the 10 Commandments during the Shoah. Now, in the meanwhile, I could cross the street in front of the weeping willow. And now you can show me again, Charlie, because behind me, everybody is going to see the Temple of the Heroes. So back to Agi, and there is behind me another beautiful synagogue. You see the white synagogue is the dome. That's the Temple of the Heroes that the Jewish community of the Dohany Synagogue uses in the winter day, because would you like to pay the heating of the Dohany Street Synagogue? I bet you would not. It costs a fortune and then it is still cold. So in the winter days, it's perfect for the community. It was constructed in 1930 for the Jewish heroes of the First World War. What does this prove? That Hungarian Jews, just like the German Jews, were such big patriots that they gave their sons in order to be soldiers in the Austro-Hungarian monarchy army. And many of these Jewish soldiers became officers and got the famous Iron Cross, the medal. And I learned a very sad story from a Hungarian survivor who said he was taken to a concentration camp with his dad. The only thing his father was holding with a cramp in his hand, it was the Iron Cross. And he said, "Don't worry, my dear son. The same army will not kill this officer." He was wrong. So it's a symbolic story about Hungarian Jews who were more Hungarian than Jews, but it did not help. Okay, so now we're gonna walk to the Lutz Memorial, who was a Swiss diplomat, because you have to understand one more reason for having this large number of survivors. I mentioned the Soviet Red Army, which is a fact. Each time I complained to my dad in my teenager years that I am fed up with the obligatory Russian education and wearing that ugly red pioneer tie, my dad always told me, "Agi, darling, we are here thanks to them. They only did one good thing." But that was a big one. Okay. So beside the Soviet army, I mentioned the Gentiles of Budapest, who helped for really 25 to 30,000 Jews. And I didn't mention yet the righteous Gentiles. So Raoul Wallenberg was the most famous of them. He was born in 1912 in Sweden, son of the wealthiest Swedish family. If you go to Stockholm, you find at least 10 Wallenberg statues, the statue of the grandfather of Raoul Wallenberg. He graduated in the Michigan University on the Faculty of Architects. Then he went to live for a while in Palestine before the war broke out. The family had some business there. Now, when Roosevelt finally in 1944 January decided to help, because until that moment he didn't help too much for the Jews. So at that time he founded the War Refugee Board in order to help for Budapest Jews, because this was the only city where there were still Jews alive in bigger number. So Raoul Wallenberg volunteered to be member of this War Refugee Board, and he became the head of it. He arrived here 44 June, and he gave out 30,000 saving letters. Besides that, he saved the life of lots of others. I have 2 members in my family saved by him. Now, when the Soviets approached Budapest in order to liberate us, all the smart diplomats escaped because they knew that it's not going to be a safe place where Russians are ruling. Raoul Wallenberg remained. He was so dedicated. He said, saving Jews was only the first step. Now I would like to give them back their dignity. He wanted to meet the Soviets in order to talk about the rehabilitation of the Hungarian Jews coming back from the camps. He was captured by the Soviets. For long years, no news about him. After Stalin died, they admitted, oh, indeed, we took him, but he died straight ahead in a heart attack. It was a lie, of course. For a long time, there was a question mark at the end of his story. But about 70 years ago, a Canadian Jewish lawyer, David Matas, finished his investigations in the KGB archives and said Raoul Wallenberg was executed in the prison of Lubyanka, 47 July the 17th. It's one of the saddest stories of the last century. Now, in the meanwhile, we arrived to the memorial of Karl Lutz, an angel who is trying to help for a Jewish man who is laying on the ground. And if you don't see it very well behind me, then I will ask Charlie to show the photo that I sent you. So Karl Lutz was a Swiss diplomat. During the war years, Switzerland was representing Britain because Britain was an enemy of Hungary, because Hungary was an ally of Germany. Now, being in this position, Karl Lutz had an agreement with the Hungarian Prime Minister that he can distribute 7,800 visas for Palestine. It was an international diplomatic agreement. Britain was ruling on Palestine. He gave out these visas, looked out of the window, and he saw a huge crowd. Thousands of Jews were standing there day and night, waiting for the only help, for these saving letters. He said, I must help these people. So he started to number again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7,800. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Again and again and again. These were all fake. The Nazis knew that these were fake, but if you bribed them, they accepted them. So he was the one who recognized that here in Budapest, in the last year of the war, only by corruption you can save Jews. The smart Nazis knew that they were losing. They wanted to get out of this whole dirty situation as wealthy as possible and buy some papers from the Perons or from Brasilia and start a new life. He was the one who taught also to Wallenberg, who were corruptible among the Nazis. At the end of the war, he went back to Switzerland, and the Swiss government said that he overstepped his possibilities. But then the Yad Vashem recognized him as a righteous Gentile. Actually, from his second marriage, his daughter is called Agi. It's one of the most common names in the Jewish community of Budapest. Now, we can take away the photo about the Karl Lutz Memorial, because in the meanwhile, we arrived to a spot of Budapest where from you see behind me on that building, what do you see? A Rubik's Cube. Okay, it's a Rubik's Cube, but why do I have to speak about Rubik's Cube on a Jewish tour of Budapest? Well, guess what? Mr. Rubik is also from Jewish Budapest. Sometimes my guests say at the end of my tour, Agi, you are terrible. Your tours are just like the big fat Greek wedding. You say everything started in Jewish Budapest. Indeed, that's what I say, and I mean it, believe me. Okay, so the next side that I would like to show you are the stumbling stones. And here is one where I just arrived, but it's really hard to stand so that you can see it. Nearly impossible, but there it is. But it's much better if we ask Charlie to show the one that I sent. Yes, exactly. So the right photo Charlie took 6 years ago when we were standing and I was pointing with my feet. Now, I love the name Stumbling Stone because it is speaking to me. You cannot just walk by these plaques. You stumble when you notice them. You look down and you remember. The Stumbling Stone project started in the 90s by Günther Demning, a German Gentile artist. And he said, let's put down plaques in front of buildings where from Jews were taken. In Budapest, we have about 300. In Amsterdam, 3,000. In Prague, 400. All around in Europe, about 70,000. Most of them in German cities, Berlin, at least 10,000. In Hungary, it is for Jews. In other countries, it can be for Roma, Sintis, Jehovah's Witnesses, gay people. And it's a beautiful project. And each piece is placed by the same German Gentile artist, Günther Demning, who is coming back to Budapest every year to place the new one. So we are still walking. We are still walking on the Rumbach Street. And there is not only a Rumbach Street, there is also a Rumbach Synagogue. And it is behind me. So Charlie, take away the stumbling stones. And behind me, oh, that is already the interior of the Rumbach. Never mind. So we can talk about the interior as well. So the Rumbach Synagogue was constructed in 1873. You know the old Jewish joke, when there are two Jews in an island, they need three synagogues. Well, this joke is really typical on Budapest. Just about a decade after the Dohany Street Synagogue was inaugurated, a more conservative part of the Neolog community of the Dohany Street Synagogue said that that's too much for us. I mean, come on, the bima is pushed to the eastern wall. There is organ music during the service. This is not what we wanted. So they commissioned Otto Wagner, the famous Viennese Art Nouveau architect. Yes, Otto Wagner, who was the father of Viennese Art Nouveau, made the plan of the Rumbach synagogue. And it's a real masterpiece. It was used all during the history, even during the Second World War, but it was really very badly damaged. And in the 60s, they had to close it down and leave the building. There were some very brave candidates who had crazy ideas about what it could be used for. Yoko Ono, for example, after Lennon died, lived with a Hungarian art collector in London. They came back and forth to Budapest, and she said, wow, this could be my recording studio. But of course, you can imagine when the Hungarian Jewish Federation fellows have seen Yoko Ono standing with Lennon naked on the cover of the record, which is called Two Angel, I think, they refused them. There were even more crazy stories. None of them succeeded. But at the end, the Hungarian government that I always criticize really harshly, decided to help for the Jewish community, gave hell of a lot of money. And last summer, it was inaugurated. Their only criteria was that it should not be just a synagogue. It should also be a Jewish cultural center. And that's a good idea, I think, because why would we need one more empty synagogue in Budapest? So the bima in the middle, you push a button and it can be sinking into the floor. Unbelievable. Then on the second floor, there is a museum. One floor higher, a coffee house, because what else you need? And on the highest floor, offices of NGOs run by the joint distribution. It doesn't belong to any Jewish community, which means there is no quarreling. It's the best. Yeah. You can invite the rabbi that you like, the chazan that you prefer. You can arrange the wedding or the bar mitzvah you want to. And actually, if you are coming, then Charlie can give you here an excellent service. Great idea, I think.
I love it.
Okay, you love it. Good. Now, we are getting close to the end of our tour. And I think I really have to ask what questions we have, because I just saw the sign on my phone that it is 20% battery. So please tell me the questions.
Okay, first of all, Agi, this has just been amazing. First question is something for you, which something we've talked about a lot is, can you tell us about the Jewish community's relationship today with the government and your Prime Minister Orban? Yes.
Okay. Well, I need a new battery for this, I think. So, so it is very complex, I would say, if I were polite. It is terrible on one side, but on the other side, I don't say that there is anti-Semitism in Hungary, because if you look at the Chabad community, then you see that the government is the biggest friends of the Jews. So they are in really great relationship. On the other side, Orban is a nationalist, right-wing, I can easily say dictator. It means that he likes right-wing nationalist Jews. The only problem is that the Budapest Jews are lefty, liberal, cosmopolitan, internationalist. So this gives you a sort of an answer, I suppose. But there is no physical anti-Semitism here. Nobody would stab you with a knife because you are wearing a kippah walking on the street. So it's not that. You know?
That was, yeah, I mean, I know we could do a whole nother session on this conversation. Let me also ask you, can you talk a little bit about the Jewish community today? There's a Chabad and also Neolog. how does Chabad get along with everybody?
Well,
This is not meant as a Chabad question. Just how does the Jewish community function?
Okay, so in the Jewish community, the majority are secular, cultural Jews. But twice a year, they go to a synagogue, and in that time, the synagogue is 90% a Neolog synagogue. The majority of the synagogues are Neolog. What you saw now, the Dohany, and also the Rumba. And then there is a very small Orthodox community, tiny little, because Orthodox Jews surviving the Holocaust, if they wanted to continue their strictly Jewish life, they realized quite easily that this is not going to be the place for it. I mean, Budapest became communist. So they moved to New York, Bronx, Israel, wherever they wanted. So we don't have a big Jewish Orthodox community. And the Chabad story is interesting because there are hardly any Hungarian members of the Chabad community. They are the biggest institution. There are Chabad universities, high schools, primary school, kindergarten, several. Many synagogues are overtaken by them, and cultural center, and a theater where I've never put my foot. And they get loads of money from the government. But don't worry, they don't have a Jewish community of Hungarian Jews. So it's not that. That's the case.
Okay. What is there a great what's the energy in the Jewish community today in terms of, is there a writer or thinker, someone who we should be aware of?
I think that it's a co-working, the energy. There are a lot of initiative here. We have a JCC with brilliant people, Marcel, the leader of the JCC, or Zsuzsa Fritz, who is running the cultural programs of the JCC, and the summer camp led by Sasha Friedman. And there is the Mosaic Hub, which is in the synagogue that we just passed by, and all kinds of NGOs, Jewish NGOs are active there. And we arrange a great Israeli film festival. There is also a Judah Fest on the streets of the city with 100,000 members every year. And we have the only Israeli cultural center of I think outside of Israel, Budapest has the only one. Israeli Cultural Institute. There you can have Hebrew education. They arrange also the birthrights and all kinds of cultural programs. And now with the Ukrainian stories, the JCC and the Israeli Cultural Institute were the two most active by collecting the donations and arranging all the aids.
Great. Okay. I'm looking, so politically, maybe just inform us on one foot, where is Hungary coming in on the war in the Ukraine?
It is, well, I standing on the Hero Square, where I always talk about the Hungarian history, I always say that Hungary is always on the wrong side in every war. And if there is any conflict in the world, just check where are the Hungarians and get to the other side. So all these things. And now I have to confront with the situation that the Hungarian government is siding with, I mean, Putin is the best friend of the prime minister. That's a case. Putin knows too much about the prime minister, like he knew a lot about others as well. And this way he can manipulate Orban, the prime minister. So, but it is hard to say Hungary is siding, because there is half of the country that is so helpful for the Ukrainians. On the other hand, Orban just won the election a month ago with a very simple slogan: war or peace. War, then accept what Putin is doing. Peace, I mean, no. War, then get on the Ukrainian side and help them. Peace, then don't help for the Ukrainians. So this was his way to win the election. Very sad.
Yeah, So I'm looking at the hour. First of all, you did an amazing job. And it's just to be able to juggle so many things and to give a tour and not get mugged at the same time is just really quite impressive. Really, really terrific. I wanted to just, conclude with a thought before I thank you finally, which is, this week's Torah portion begins the book of Numbers, but the book of Numbers in Hebrew is actually called Bamidbar, which means in the wilderness, it's funny because the Jews might have called it the wilderness, but they were there for a long time. It was their home. And I think while there was an aspiration to get where they were going, I think it's painful when your home, it doesn't turn out the way that you think it would. And I think, you gave us an amazing overview of history as well as the contemporary situation. But I imagine those Jews, like the guy who went to the concentration camp holding the Iron Cross, thought he was home, but discovered that he was in the wilderness. And so, thank you today for helping us remember stories and also seeing the rebirth and the revitalization of the Jewish community. I just thank you to everyone for being here today. And a shout out. I know there are people whose families were from Hungary and were not blessed like yours to have a future. My friend Suzanne Lipsky is here today, and she's really the only survivor from her family. So you honored everyone's memory and you gave us hope for what can be in the future. And in the future, we want to hear about, and the next time we meet you on a tour, we want to hear about your son, who's one of the top 20 dancers and choreographers in Europe. So Agi, it was incredible. We thank you. Friends, thank you for being here today. And I also just would like to look forward to seeing everybody on our next travel adventure. All the best and have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. Köszönöm.
Szívesen. Your Hungarian is perfect now.
I learned from you.
Oh, well, that's
All right,
right.
take care, everybody. Thank you very much.
Bye.
If you want to make a donation, and please make it to CSP. They do great stuff. All the best, everybody.
Bye.